request everybody to sit with pen and paper because today also you need to write something. So as I told you, today I'll discuss on the Slutsky equation. Last day we did some numerical exercise using the Hicks definition of compensation. So using the Hicks definition of compensation, we learned how to differentiate between substitution and income effects. If I get, this will be the total effect. Okay. And now you have to practice some numerical exercises to understand the concept perfectly. So today our focus will be on Slutsky matter, Slutsky equation. Now let's first start with an equation, del xi by del pi. That is equal to del xi by del pi s plus del xi by del pi m. The left-hand side del xi by del pi refers to total effect of relative price change. Okay. So first you write down this equation, del xi by del pi is equal to del xi by del pi s plus del xi by del pi m. Then please note down the LHS represents the total effect of relative price change. On demand for the concerned commodity. On demand for the concerned commodity. So if I consider a two commodity world, I will run in between 1 and 2. So it will be del x1 by del p1 and del x2 by del p2. And if I extend this framework in commodity world, in that case, you can extend these derivative up to in nth commodity. Okay, then please add del xi by del pi within square bracket subscript s refers to substitution effect of relative price change, whereas del xi by del pi m refers to income effect of relative price change. Remember that this income effect has not been generated because of change in money income. Rather, it has been generated through price channel. So there will be certain changes in the price of the commodity, and for that matter, your purchasing power will either increase or decrease. Okay, if there is reduction in relative price of the concerned commodity, your real income will increase. On the other hand, if there is an increase in relative price of the concerned commodity, in that case, your real income will fall. So this income effect is coming via the channel of price change, not via the channel through the change in money income of the consumer. Okay. Next, suppose you purchase 20 units of a commodity X and price of X falls by say 2 units. You purchase 20 units of a commodity X and price of X falls by 2 units. Now this reduction in price can be captured by del P is equal to -2. On the other hand, if there is an increase in price, we will consider plus sign. So in this case, if I consider a fall in relative price of X, I am considering -2. Del P is equal to -2. Next, an equivalent change in income because of this price change is del M. An equivalent change in income because of this price change is del M, and that will be, minus of -2 into 20. Actually, I used to purchase 20 units of the commodity, and here there will be since price is falling, there will be a positive change in income. Okay. So I'm considering minus of minus 2 into 20. So here the income will increase. However, if it is plus 2, in that case income will fall. In that case, minus of 2 into 20. So income will fall by 40 rupees. Here income is rising by 40 rupees. Okay. Now the question is why I am considering minus of del P into X. Okay. So please look at this general statement. In general, this income change will be captured by del M is equal to minus del P into Xi. This income change will be accommodated by minus del P into Xi. Which implies del P is equal to minus del M by Xi. Actually, in the second term, we will change the notation a bit. We will bring del M in place of del Pi. And for that matter, we are presenting first, we are considering an example, trying to understand the matter. And then we are writing it using the general notation. So this implies del P is equivalent to minus del M by Xi. So I'll substitute this del P, the second del Pi, by this term, So substituting this in the first equation, we get del Xi by del Pi is equal to del Xi by del Pi is minus Xi into del Xi by del M. Multiplying both sides by Pi by Xi, and in addition, multiplying both numerator and denominator of the last term by M, we get Pi by Xi, del Xi by del Pi. Both sides I am multiplying by Pi by Xi. Here also the similar term, only the S is there. Pi by Xi into del Xi by del Pi S minus, I'm writing this as, for the second term, we will multiply both the numerator and denominator by M. So, Pi by Xi is there. I'm writing it in this format. So, minus Xi by Xi into Pi by M, that is proportion of income spent on a particular commodity. This ratio Xi Pi by M, that indicates expenditure on a particular commodity with respect to the total income. So proportion of income spent on a particular commodity into M by Xi into del Xi by del M. So if I use this format, this is the elasticity format. This is the elasticity format. Okay. So this equation, you can number the equations. So you can number this as equation number 1. Call it equation number 1. This you number as 2, equation number 2, and this you number as equation number 3. Equation 2 is called the equation 2 is called the Slutsky equation. Slutsky equation. And this is the elasticity version of the same. If I convert the basic equation in terms of price elasticities, so basically this is own price elasticity, and this is the cross price elasticity. Okay, I'll come to this, because if I consider the notation a bit, it will work as cross price elasticity. And this is the income elasticity part. This is the income elasticity part. So this is the Slutsky equation, and this is the elasticity version of the Slutsky equation. For cross commodities, equation 2, okay, equations 1 and 2 can be presented as, for cross commodities, equations 1 and 2 can be presented as del xj by del pi is equal to del xj by del pi s plus del xj by del pi m. So I'm just, in the first equation, I consider del xi by del pi. Now I'm considering del xj by del pi. And naturally, equation 2 can be changed to del xj by del pi is equal to del xj by del pis minus xi into del xj by del m. So this you can name as equations 4 and 5. Equations 4 and 5. So up to this, anyone, any question? Got every notations, everything perfectly? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now this Slutsky equation can be drawn properly, using the matrix algebra. So in the Mathico class, probably you will learn a part in this semester, and rest will be continued in the next semester. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, in the previous slide, yeah, ma'am, here, ma'am, del P is equal to minus del M by Xi. And we are basically putting this equation in the Slutsky equation. Ma'am, then after putting it, where is that capital M, ma'am? That part, I got a bit confused, ma'am.
Okay. This part, the same, this sub,
Yes, ma'am, yeah, yeah.
that is not required at all. Now I am understanding. Now here what I have done, in every part I have used the same notation, del xi by del pi. Del xi by del pi here, del xi by del pi here. So I have to tell you, this del xi by del pi I am writing to indicate the change in demand only due to change in price. And this part I am writing the change in demand due to change in income, basically, which has occurred due to change in price. Okay.
Okay, ma'am, okay, now I
In
understand.
the name, that is not required. Change in demand due to change in income is
Yes,
directly.
ma'am.
So in notation is not required.
Yeah, ma'am. Got it, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Now I am going to tell you about a very, very important concept, So you have to write the matters perfectly and understand the matter perfectly. Okay. So let's first look at the summary, and then I'll give you the detailed discussion on it. Now, when I am using this equation 5, say. Okay, equation 5, say, this version. In that case, del xj by del pi s, this is greater than 0. What does it mean? If I consider a two commodity world, both I and j are running from 1 to 2, however, I not equal to j. If I consider this context, both I and j are running from 1 to 2, however, I not equal to j. So in that case, I can consider this as del x1 by del p2, del x1 by del p2. Change in demand for x1 due to change in price of the second commodity, x2. Now this is greater than 0 indicates as price of x2 falls, the quantity demanded for first commodity, that is also falling. As price of x2 is falling, quantity demanded for x1 is also falling. For that matter, the derivative is positive. Both are falling. Both the numerator and denominator are falling. And for that matter, the derivative is getting the sign positive. Now, when it will occur? Price of x2 is falling, and for that demand for x1 is also falling. So in this case, it is indicating price of x2 is falling, and for that matter, the demand for, it will be better to understand if I consider in terms of increase in the price of the second commodity. If there is an increase in the price of the second commodity, that is reducing the demand for the second commodity, and that in turn is increasing the demand for the first commodity. This increase in demand for the first commodity will happen if and only if x1 and x2 are substitutes in nature. On the other hand, the example I started to tell you, when price of x2 is falling, demand for x1 is increasing, and that in turn is reducing the demand for x1 if and only if people start substituting x1 by x2. Okay, people have started to substitute one commodity by other. In that case only, the sign of this derivative will be positive. So when the commodities are substitutes to each other, there is substitutability between the commodities. In that case, this del xj by del pi, that will be positive. Now del xj by del pi s, that is this right hand side term, is positive. That indicates commodities are net substitutes. I am emphasizing on the term net substitutes, net substitutes. On the other hand, if this entire left hand side is positive, that is the total effect is positive, we call the commodities to be gross substitutes to each other. If only this term is positive, we call the commodities are net substitutes. On the other hand, if the left hand side term, that is del xj by del pi te, total effect, that is positive, then the commodities are called gross substitutes. Now the major statement or major argument in this context is net substitutability does not necessarily indicate gross substitutability. However, if the commodities are gross substitutes, then they are also net substitutes. So would you please write down this sentence? First, you write down these two. Could you complete writing these two things? Del xj by del pi is greater than 0 indicates commodities are net substitutes. Del xj by del pi greater than 0 indicates commodities are gross substitutes. So please first write down this too. Could you complete this?
Yes, ma'am.
Then you add, if two commodities are net substitutes, if two commodities are net substitutes, that does not necessarily indicate, that does not necessarily indicate the commodities are gross substitutes too. However, if the commodities are gross substitutes, they are also net substitutes to each other. They are also net substitutes to each other. Okay. Let's first complete the statements and then I'll go for the elaboration. On the other hand, del xj by del pi is less than 0 indicates commodities are net complements. Price of butter is increasing, demand for butter is falling, and that in turn reducing the demand for bread. So price of butter is increasing, demand for bread is falling. So sign is negative. So commodities are net complements. On the other hand, del xj by del pi less than 0, that is the total effect is less than 0, implies commodities are gross complements. Commodities are gross complements. And if two commodities are net complements to each other, two commodities are net complements to each other, that does not necessarily indicate commodities are also gross complements. However, if the commodities are gross complements, they are net complements too. They are net complements too. Everybody could complete up to this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's try to elaborate this. Let's try to understand this. Now please look at the board, So the first equation is the Slutsky equation. Del xj by del pi is equal to del xj by del pis minus xi into del xj by del m. Now let's first consider net substitutability. Del xj by del pi is greater than 0. And I hope by this time you are understanding positive sign of this cross relation indicates the commodities are substitutes and the negative sign indicates the commodities are complementary to each other. Okay. Now, we are first starting with del xj by del pi positive. This right hand side is positive. Now this entire thing will be positive if del xj by del m is negative. Okay. That is, the total effect will be positive. In this context, the total effect will be positive if and only if, unambiguously the total effect will be positive if and only if this del xj by del m is less than 0. Okay. Now del xj by del m less than 0, what is the meaning of this? What kind of commodity will be xj in that case? If I want del,
Inferior.
I didn't get you. Would you please repeat?
Ma'am, inferior because it is negative.
Inferior good. Very good. Inferior good. This xi is always positive. This xi is quantity demanded for certain commodity. So this is positive. So this entire thing will be unambiguously positive if and only if the commodity, the concerned commodity is inferior in nature. Now, if the commodity is a normal good, in that case, del xj by del m is positive. So this, if I need this entire thing should be positive, then the absolute value of the substitution effect should offset this negative part, this entire negative part. So when the commodities are normal in nature, we cannot say unambiguously net substitutability indicates gross substitutability. If the commodities are inferior in nature, in that case, net substitutes indicates gross substitutes. However, if the commodities are normal in nature, net substitutability will indicate or result in gross substitutability if and only if modulus del xj del pis is greater than xi into del xj by del m. Okay, so these things are coming. So let's one by one note down these points. In this case, del xj by del pi will be greater than 0 please add, will be unambiguously greater than 0. In this case, del xj by del pi will be unambiguously greater than 0. Unambiguously greater than 0 if and only if del xj by del m is negative. That is, if and only if xj is an xj is an inferior good. If xj is a normal good, Okay, so if xj is a normal good, the modulus value of these del xj by del pis should be greater than xi into del xj by del m to have del xj by del pi, that is the total effect, to be positive. Thus, net substitutability does not necessarily indicate gross substitutability. Thus, net substitutability does not necessarily indicate gross substitutability. However, if the commodities are gross substitutes, then what is happening? The left-hand side is positive. Now, the left-hand side is positive. That is indicating, del xj by del pi, that is also positive. Del xj by del pi is positive, del xj by del m is negative either, or del xj by del pi positive, and that is offsetting the impact of uh, the negative value of the xi into del xj by del m, etc. So if the left hand side is positive, that is indicating the first term in the right hand side is positive. So if the commodities are gross substitutes, in that case, they are necessarily net substitutes, but not the vice versa, not the vice versa. Commodities are net substitutes, that will not indicate they are also gross substitutes. However, if they are gross substitutes, in that case, they will be necessarily net substitutes. Any question? Everybody could understand this properly? Yes or no? Not only one
Yes,
or two.
ma'am.
Everybody understanding this?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if you understand that part, the second part is easy. The same similar kind of argument we will put to discuss about net complementary matters. Now, net complements, that indicates this del xj by del pi, that is negative. Okay. Now, net complement will also indicate the left hand side will be also negative if del xj by del m is positive. So, for the normal commodities, unambiguously we can state net complementarity indicates gross complementarity. Okay. However, if the commodities are inferior, in that case, the modular absolute value matters. Absolute value matters. Okay. So we have to write this argument only. So write down, in this case, del xj by del pi less than 0. Del xj by del pi means the left hand side. In this case, del xj by del pi will be unambiguously less than 0 if and only if del xj by del m is positive. That is, if and only if xj is a normal good. Next, however, if xj is an inferior good, however, if xj is an inferior good, del xj by del xj by del pi will be less than 0 if and if, what should I write?
The mod of del j by del pi is would be greater than the mod of xi
Then
and xi
I
del.
said y is then modulus.
Yes, sir.
Modulus of this is
Greater than the modulus of xi into del xj by del.
so if xj is an inferior good, del xj by del m is negative, so the entire thing is becoming positive. So if you want to make to be negative, del xj by del pi s modulus will be greater than modulus of xi into del xj by del m. Okay. Thus, gross complement, if the commodities are gross complementary, thus, if the commodities are gross complementary, they are also net complementary to each other. However, the reverse is not true. However, the reverse is not true. Okay, I hope you are understanding. If the commodities are net complementary to each other, then that does not necessarily indicate the commodities are gross complementary to each other. Okay, so this is the entire story. Anybody, any question, anything? Anything I need to repeat? Any part, or is it perfectly understandable?
Ma'am, can you repeat that inferior part? Ma'am, the last part.
Okay. Now, when the commodities are inferior in nature, what will be the sign of del xj by del m? Please tell me. Who?
Ma'am, it will be negative.
It will be negative. Okay. So it will be, look at this equation I have written. Okay. So this equation only. So you are telling when the commodities are inferior, this part is negative. So we will make this second term positive, I think you are understanding.
Yes, ma'am.
For gross complementarity, you need this part will be, the entire part will be negative. Okay. So if this part is positive and you want to make this entire thing negative, in that case, the modulus value of this part, which is negative because you have started with net complementary commodities. So this part is negative. So you want that the modulus or the absolute value of this part should be greater than this part, so that the entire thing will be negative. This first,
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
yeah, first part is negative, that will offset the positivity part of this entire thing. For that matter, you need the absolute value of the substitution effect part, this absolute value of this S part, that will be, or the substitution effect part, that will be greater than that of this part.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone else? Any confusion? Anything you could not understand? All these concepts, this entire income effect, substitution effect, deriving it for different contexts, ICC, PCC, mathematical derivation of substitution effect, income effect, derivation of, conceptualizing the Slutsky equation, and from there developing the concepts of net and gross substitutes, complementary. All these things are very, very important for the end semester part, because in the mid sem you give, an exam up to the properties of the indifference curve and derivation of consumers equilibrium. However, this part was not there in the midterm exam, so naturally our emphasis will be on this part, though there will be questions from that part too. However, emphasis will be on this part. So try to understand each and every point we are discussing in the class. Now, since all of you understood this matter, in the next step, I am going for several applications. So we will first start with tax and subsidies. From the general discussion, you got some idea about taxes, and there are direct and indirect taxes. However, in our theory, our focus will be mostly on indirect taxes. So that kind of effect of tax, how we will incorporate in these total effect, substitution effect, income effect thing, that we are going to discuss. Okay, so please give, first you give heading applications. So now we are going to discuss some real life applications where we need the discussion based on substitution effect and income effect of relative price change. And then give the first topic we are going to discuss, that is tax on a commodity. So number one, under the application heading, the number one subheading is tax on a commodity. Tax on a commodity. Is that we consider the impact of indirect tax imposed by the government on a particular commodity. Okay, now first tell me, when the government will impose a tax, whether there will be an increase in price of the commodity or reduction in the price of the commodity?
Increase.
Increase.
Increase, everybody? There will be an increase
Yes.
in price of the commodity. Discussed this thing earlier. If there is any kind of tax, we mainly discussed about two types of important taxes, ad valorem tax and excise, specific excise tax. And under both the circumstances, we found that as there is an imposition of tax there will be some increase in price of the commodity. Okay, so in general, if there is a tax imposed on a particular commodity, price of the commodity will increase. So what will be the direction of the budget line? Will it move to the outward direction or will it move to the inward direction?
Inward.
Inward.
Very good. So first write down a sentence. After imposition of a tax, after imposition of a tax, the price paid by consumers goes up. Price paid by consumers goes up, and the consumption of the commodity goes down. And the consumption of the commodity goes down. Okay, so graphically we will like to analyze this matter. Okay, so we will consider the usual context. So to capture the impact of an indirect tax on a certain commodity, we consider a two commodity world. Okay, we consider a budget line AB. We measure just let me look at the notation I have used. All other goods, and considering along the vertical axis, all other goods. So as you said, the budget line will rotate to the inward direction after the increase in price. So I'm considering this rotation of the budget line. I'm calling this budget line AC, calling this figure 1. I see 1. And this I'm calling E. So please add, in figure 1, AB is the original budget line. AB is the original budget line. Before the tax is imposed on commodity X, AB is the original budget line. Before the tax is imposed on commodity X. The consumer's equilibrium is at E. The consumer's equilibrium is at E, where OG of X is purchased and OH of income is spent on all other goods. Within bracket.
Ma'am, can you repeat this line once again?
Consumer's equilibrium is at E, where OG of X is purchased. OG of X is purchased and OH of income is spent on all other goods. AOG. Thus, AH of income is spent on X. Thus, AH of income is spent on X. Okay. Now, a tax is imposed on X. Or you can write now, as a tax is imposed on X, price of X goes up and the budget line rotates to AC. The equilibrium point shifts to E prime. The equilibrium point shifts to E prime. So I'm calling this E prime. G prime, H prime. So already you have written the equilibrium point shifts to E prime. the purchase of X, reduces to OG prime, and the consumer's utility level, the purchase of X reduces to OG prime, and the consumer's utility level reduces to IC2. Consumer now spends OH prime on AOG and AH prime on X. AH prime on X. Though consumption of X is falling from OG to OG prime, however, X is very expensive and the consumer needs to buy at least some amount of X. So expenditure on X is increasing from AH to AH prime. Okay. And now the question is, how much of the expenditure on X, now the question is, how much of the expenditure on X is the tax? How much of the expenditure on X is the tax? To derive this, let's consider the following exercise. Let's consider the following exercise. To derive this, let's consider the following exercise. Add. She purchases or consumer purchases OG prime is equal to H prime E prime. Consumer purchases OG prime is equal to H prime E prime of X at the price represented by the slope of AC. At the price represented by the slope of AC. I'm telling consumer purchases H prime E prime of X at price represented by the slope of AC. So the price is equal to AH by HE. Sorry, AH prime by, sorry. So the price is equal to AH prime. Okay. So the price is equal to We want to find out the slope of AC. So perpendicular by base of the triangle AH prime E prime we are considering. Perpendicular is AH prime divided by the base H prime E prime. Everybody got this?
Yes, ma'am.
Liquid within bracket, please add reference, REF. Reference is the triangle AH prime E prime. AH prime E prime. Next, before the tax, the price was AH by HE. Reference is the triangle AHE equal to the absolute value of the slope of AB equal to the absolute value of the slope of AB. The difference is the that is the difference in the price. That is AH prime by H prime E prime minus AH by HE. This difference. The difference is the burden of the tax. The difference is the burden of the tax borne by the consumer. The difference is the burden of the tax. Difference means AH prime by H prime E prime minus AH by HE. The difference is the burden of tax borne by the consumer. Next, let's find the cost of OG prime of X. Let's consider the cost of OG prime of X. That is the new amount the consumer is purchasing, OG prime of X at the pre-tax price. Let's find the cost of OG prime of X at the pre-tax price. For this, we draw a budget line. For this, we draw a budget line KL. I'll draw it. Budget line KL through E prime, which is parallel to AB. For this, we draw a budget line KL through E prime, which is parallel to AB. So first you look at the diagram, what will be the structure of the diagram, then I'll draw this. So this is E prime. Now I am drawing a budget line KL, this green one, which is parallel to AB through these E prime. So I'll draw a budget line KL through this point E prime, through this point E prime. Okay, this budget line is parallel to AB and passing through E prime. This we are marking as KL. Everybody got this?
Yes, ma'am.
So please add the cost of OG prime. The cost of OG prime is equal to H prime E prime. The cost of OG prime equal to H prime E prime of X at pre-tax price is H prime K. At pre-tax price is H prime K. Because if you draw a line parallel to AB, the same price which was there before the imposition of tax, which is passing through E prime, you're spending on X to have the same amount of X is given by H prime K. This amount, H prime K, because the budget line parallel to this passing through E prime is given by KL. So, you know, if this price is there and you wanted to consume OG prime, not OG, your spending will be given by KH prime. Your spending will be given by KH prime. So to have OG prime, the amount you are consuming now after the imposition of tax, if you want to consume this amount with the pre-tax position, the expenditure you need to bear, that is given by KH prime. Okay, KH prime. Now you are spending AH prime. However, if it is the pre-tax position, you are spending only KH prime. Thus, the difference AH prime minus KH prime is equal to AK is the total tax paid by the consumer on his or her purchase of OG prime of X. Purchase of OG prime of X. So this is the amount you are bearing, you know, as tax. Next paragraph. If the tax on X is replaced by a, if the tax on X is replaced by a lump sum tax on income, okay, look at the graph. I have considered a budget line KL where the income is okay. Okay, if I consider the price of Y is 1, the income is given by okay. Initially, my budget was, or the income is given by OA. So initial income is OA and the now income is okay after the imposition of the tax. After the imposition of the tax, basically, there is certain fall in the real income of the consumer. Okay, so income reduces to real income of the consumer reduces to okay. So actually, via the price mechanism, I am not considering this. Directly, the employer is cutting some income and sending it to the government in the form of tax revenue. Suppose I am replacing this kind of indirect tax, that is, tax on prices of the commodity. Instead of this, I am considering a mechanism where employer is directly cutting the same amount from the income and sending it to the government. Okay, so this is called lump sum tax on income. So an amount directly I'm cutting down. I'm not checking it whether the income is higher, whether the income is lower, just a lump sum tax. The main objective of imposing indirect tax is that we can bring more people under the tax net. If it is direct tax, the problem is you will be not able to charge this kind of tax if you do not come to under certain income bracket. The advantage of indirect tax is the tax net is wider because you can bring more people under the taxation. Okay. So to keep the parity with this objective, I am talking about lump sum tax on income. Everybody's income is reduced by the same amount. Okay, a lump sum tax on income. It's not the progressive or the regressive kind of tax. That is, it is increasing with increase in income, falling with reduction in income. It's not that, or it is increasing at a regressive rate. So higher the income, lesser the tax rate. Nothing like this. It is a lump sum tax. From everybody's income, we are cutting down something and sending it to the government. So if this is the position, question is, in that case, consumers will be better off or worse off. Okay. So if this kind of commodity taxation is replaced by a lump sum tax on income, that is, everybody's income is falling by certain amount AK, in that case, the benefit will increase or not. That is the question. Okay. Now, if you look at this diagram, and if I consider after the lump sum tax, everybody's income parallelly moves back to KL from AB. It is shifting to the backward direction. Income line is shifting to this direction, So everybody's income has fallen. Then also, we can show the situation will be better than that of this indirect tax. If I consider the budget line KL, there is a chance that I can move, just a minute. I can move to a higher indifference curve. I can move to a higher indifference curve. Okay. I hope everybody is getting, you know. Okay, so there is a chance that consumer can move to higher indifference curve and can move to OE double prime, sorry, E double prime, consuming OG double prime of X. Okay, so there is this kind of thing there. And if this kind of indirect tax is replaced by the similar kind of lump sum income tax, which will give the same revenue to the government, for the government, there will be no change in the revenue. However, there will be some improvement in the welfare of the consumers. They will be able to consume on a bit higher indifference curve IC3. Okay, so that I am telling, if the tax on X is replaced by a lump sum tax on income of consumer, so please note down, if the tax of X is replaced by a lump sum tax on the income of consumer to yield the same revenue, for the government, the consumer will buy more X. The consumer will buy more X and be better off. Consumer will buy more X and be better off, or double F, better off. If AK is the amount of lump sum tax, same tax revenue. If AK is the amount of lump sum tax, the price of X is not affected. The price of X is not affected because, you know, KL and AB are parallel to each other. So price of X is not affected. So the budget line is KL. So the budget line is KL. The KL budget line is flatter than the budget line AC. The KL budget line is flatter than the budget line AC. So at E prime, it is passing through E prime. So at E prime, the consumer is not at equilibrium. So at E prime, the consumer is not at equilibrium with KL. The consumer is not at equilibrium with KL. He or she moves to E double prime. Consumer moves to E double prime with higher consumption of X. By increasing the consumption of X to OG double prime, by increasing consumption of X to OG double prime, the consumer improves the utility level. Consumer improves the utility level from IC2 to IC3. Thus, from the consumer's point of view, the lump sum income tax is better than the commodity tax. When both the taxes, so from consumer's point of view, the lump sum tax is better than the commodity. The lump sum tax is better than the commodity tax. Lump sum income tax is better than the commodity tax. When the two taxes yield the same revenue to the government. Okay. When the two taxes yield the same revenue to the government. Okay, so this is all about the taxation part. Next, we can consider the subsidy part. So, go through all these things. Try to understand the mechanism. The subsidy part will be just the reverse. And I hope you will be able to develop the matter on your own. I'll discuss it in the class. However, I think all of you will understand it easily if you understand this part perfectly. Okay, any question, anything?